The galaxy had seen many wars, but none as fierce as the conflict between humans and the Xeric Empire. For nearly 10 years, star systems burned as fleets clashed in the void. The Xerac were a proud species, towering and powerful, with armored skin and sharp crowns upon their heads. For centuries, they had ruled their side of the stars without challenge. But then came humanity, young, reckless, and unafraid. At first, the Xerac laughed at humans. They considered them fragile and weak, not worthy of notice. But humanity was stubborn. Every defeat only made them rise again, with new ships, new strategies, and stronger resolve. In time, the war turned, and the mighty Xerac Empire felt the sting of real fear. Now, after years of blood and fire, the war had reached its breaking point. The last great Xerac fleet, commanded by King Zelvar himself, was cornered near the shattered remains of the Drivian Belt. Human ships closed in from all sides, their weapons glowing as they prepared for the final strike. On the bridge of the human flagship Valiant, Admiral James Renner stood tall, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen. Around him, his officers worked quickly, tracking enemy movements. Everyone knew what was about to happen. The war was about to end. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Harris, the young communications officer, "we have a signal from the Xerac flagship. The king himself is requesting parley." A hush fell over the bridge. Renner's jaw tightened. "Put it through." The screen flickered and the face of King Zelvar appeared. He was a towering figure, his scaled skin marked with golden lines of age and honor, but his eyes, once fierce with pride, were filled with desperation. "Humans," Zelvar began, his voice heavy. "I, King of the Xerac, surrender. Spare my life, and I will give you what no victory could ever bring. I will give you tribute. I will give you treasure, and I will give you my blood." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Renner crossed his arms. "Your blood? What do you mean?" The king hesitated, his pride fighting with his fear. At last he gestured, and another figure was pulled forward into view. A girl, smaller than the towering Xerac soldiers around her, stood trembling. Her skin was pale by Xerac standards, her frame thin and delicate. Where her people prized tall horns and broad shoulders, she had only small ridges and narrow arms. Her father placed a hand on her shoulder as though presenting a tool, not a daughter. "This is Princess Vera," Zelvar declared. "She is of my line, yet unwanted by my court. To us, she is a shame. To you, she will be a gift. Take her. She will be your hostage, your prize. In return, let me live." The humans on the bridge fell silent. The idea was shocking. "A king, offering his own daughter as payment for mercy," Harris whispered. "He's trading his child to save himself." Renner's gaze stayed locked on the alien girl. She did not lift her head, did not speak. She stood still, her hands clenched, her eyes lowered. She looked more like a prisoner than a princess. "King Zelvar," Renner said at last, his voice hard, "you want mercy, and you offer us your daughter as a gift?" "Yes," Zelvar hissed. "She is nothing to me. But to you she may be of use. With her you will hold power over me. I cannot strike you while you hold my blood." Renner studied him carefully. The Xerac were proud, but here was their king discarding his own child like a coin. It was a strange and bitter sight. He turned to his officers. "Thoughts?" Captain Alvarez, his second in command, frowned deeply. "It could be a trick. A spy placed among us." Or, Harris whispered, "maybe she really is unwanted. Maybe she's different." Renner thought for a long moment, then faced the alien king again. "Very well. Your life will be spared, King Zelvar, but your fleet will stand down, and your weapons will be turned over to us. As for your daughter, we will take her." Zelvar exhaled, relief mixing with bitterness. "Then it is done. I live. She is yours." Without another word, the transmission ended. The human crew was silent for a while. The war was over, yet victory felt strange. Instead of triumph, there was unease. A king had bought his life with his child, and now she was their responsibility. Hours later, a small shuttle docked with the Valiant. Guards escorted Princess Vera aboard. She stepped onto the human ship with hesitant steps, her eyes darting around at the unfamiliar faces. The crew stared at her in return. She was alien, but not in the way they expected. Where the Xerac were terrifying in their grandeur, she seemed fragile, almost human in scale. Renner met her at the docking bay. He stood tall, hands clasped behind his back. "Princess Vera," he said evenly, "I am Admiral Renner of the Terran fleet. You are safe here. No harm will come to you, she did not answer. Her eyes flicked upward only for a second, then fell again. She seemed unsure if his words were truth or another kind of chain. Alvarez whispered to the Admiral, "Safe? Sir, what if she's a weapon? What if her father has planted something in her?" Renner shook his head. "We'll keep her under watch. But look at her. She's no weapon. She's a girl who's just been abandoned by her own father." For a moment, pity touched even the hardened captain's face. That night, the crew talked in hushed voices. Some felt distrust. Others felt sorrow. But all of them agreed on one thing. The galaxy had just changed. The war was finished and the Zarak king had lived. Yet the real story, the one whispered in the corridors of the Valiant, was about the girl no one wanted. The girl given away as if she were nothing. Princess Vera slept in a quiet chamber under guard. She lay awake, her heart heavy, wondering if she was now less than a daughter, less than a princess, less than anything at all. She did not know what humans would make of her, but the humans were not like her own people. Where the Zarak saw weakness, humanity had always seen something else, and soon she would learn what it meant to be among them. The bargain was made. The war was over, and the story of Princess Vera had only just begun. The Valiant moved slowly through the dark space of the Drivian Belt, carrying victory in its wake. The human fleet was returning home after years of war, but on board the flagship, the crew's attention was fixed on something far smaller than a battle. They were watching the new passenger who had come to them as part of a strange bargain, Princess Vera of the Zarak. She stayed in a quiet chamber guarded by 2 soldiers at all times. The room was simple, with a bed, a desk, and a single screen showing star maps. The humans had given her food and water, but she hardly touched it. She spoke little, only answering when someone directly asked. Most of the time, she sat still, staring at the screen as though it held secrets no one else could see. The crew whispered about her in the halls. To the Zarak, she was a failure of beauty and strength. To the humans, she was a mystery. Lieutenant Harris was among the first to show curiosity. He was young, with bright eyes and a habit of asking too many questions. One evening, when delivering a data slate to the guards, he glanced into the room. Vera was seated by the desk, her thin hands tracing patterns across the glowing star maps. "Do you understand those?" Harris asked, half curious, half unsure if she would even reply. Her eyes lifted for the first time. They were clear and sharp, brighter than he expected. "The currents," she said softly. "The way the void breathes. Your maps do not show them. But I can see," Harris blinked. "Currents? In space?" She looked down again as if afraid she had spoken too much. It does not matter. That short exchange stuck in Harris's mind. The next day, he spoke to Admiral Renner about it. "Sir, she might know something about hyperspace travel. She said she can see currents. Maybe she means gravitational patterns or energy flows." Renner raised an eyebrow. "Or maybe she was just trying to confuse you. But keep watching. If she has knowledge, we'll learn soon enough." The first real change came a few days later. The fleet was preparing to jump through a difficult sector of hyperspace, a region known for unstable currents. The navigators worked hard, calculating safe routes, but the numbers refused to balance. Every path looked dangerous. Vera, who had been watching silently from her chamber, suddenly spoke up. "You are turning too far to the left," she said to Harris, who was standing outside her door with the latest charts. "The current bends inward there. If you follow, the field will crush you." Harris froze. "How do you know that?" She pointed at the map, her hand steady. "The rhythm is wrong here. But if you shift your entry point slightly, the waves will carry you through." The young lieutenant hesitated, then ran to the bridge with her suggestion. The navigators were doubtful, but Renner, who had been listening carefully, finally said, "We'll test her path. Just once." When the jump was made, the ship slid through hyperspace smoothly, faster and safer than ever before. The crew let out cheers, and even the hardened admiral allowed himself a thin smile. "Interesting," Renner murmured. "Very interesting." Word of her guidance spread quickly. The crew began to look at her differently. Where once there had been suspicion, now there was curiosity. She was still guarded, still treated as a guest prisoner, but when she walked the narrow halls of the ship, heads turned with new respect. Not everyone welcomed the change. Captain Alvarez remained cautious. "Admiral, with respect, we can't trust her. She's still the daughter of the enemy king. Maybe this is part of some greater plan." Renner shook his head. If it is, then it is a plan that just saved this fleet. Until proven otherwise, we will use every advantage she offers. Vera, however, did not feel pride in her small success. In her own heart, there was only confusion. She had grown up in a court where she was called weak, useless, and unworthy. Her father never once praised her. Now strangers, humans, looked at her with something else. Was it respect or pity? She could not tell. One evening, Harris brought her food and found her sitting quietly. "Why are you helping us?" he asked. "We're supposed to be your enemies." She hesitated before answering. "You are not my enemies. My enemies are the voices that told me I was nothing. My father gave me away as if I were broken. But when I speak here, you listen, that is, different." Harris was silent for a long moment. "Humans don't always get things right," he admitted. "But we try to give everyone a chance. Maybe you deserve one too." She looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time a faint, uncertain smile touched her lips. The days passed, and Vera slowly became more than just a silent figure in the corner. She joined the navigators during hyperspace planning, pointing out invisible flows they had never noticed. She showed them how to listen to the faint vibrations of the ship's hull, how the universe whispered its hidden paths. The crew grew to trust her. Even Alvarez, though still wary, could not deny the results. Travel became faster and safer than ever before. They began to call her the Seer of the Stars, half in jest, half in awe. Yet despite the growing acceptance, Vera still carried the heavy weight of doubt. Late at night, she sat alone in her chamber, whispering to herself, "Why do they treat me with care? Why do they not cast me away as my father did?" The stars outside gave no answer. Then came a test. The fleet entered a sector near the Black Rim where strange storms often erupted without warning. As they moved, sensors lit up with alarms. An energy surge was building nearby. The navigators panicked, scrambling to find a safe path. Vera stepped forward. "You must turn downward," she said firmly. "Not away. If you go away, the storm will follow. If you go downward, it will pass above you." Alvarez snapped. "That makes no sense. How can you predict something the sensors can't?" But Renner, watching her steady gaze, gave the order. "Follow her direction." The ships turned downward into the darkness below the storm. Moments later, a massive energy wave swept across the region. Had they gone the other way, the fleet would have been caught and torn apart. Instead, the storm passed harmlessly above them. The bridge erupted with cheers. Harris slapped the console in relief. Even Alvarez stood stunned, his doubts shaken. Renner looked at the princess. "You've saved us again," he said simply. Vera lowered her eyes, unsure how to accept such words. "I only followed what I could see," she whispered. But the crew knew better. She had saved them not once but twice, and in the hearts of the humans, she was no longer a burden. She was part of them. That night, Harris brought her to the observation deck where the stars stretched endlessly outside the glass. "Do you see?" he asked. "That's what freedom looks like. Out there, we're not defined by what our fathers or kings call us. We make our own place." Vera gazed at the stars. For the first time in her life, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was not unwanted. She was different, yes. But among the humans, different did not mean worthless. It meant special. And though she did not know it yet, the galaxy was about to test just how special she truly was. The Valiant traveled through the stars with steady speed, carrying both victory and uncertainty. Though the war with the Xerac Empire seemed over, the crew knew peace was never simple. Shadows of conflict still lingered in the galaxy, and many wondered if the alien king's surrender was truly the end. On board, life continued. Princess Vera, once a silent figure in her guarded chamber, now walked the halls more often. She was still watched by soldiers, but the eyes that followed her were no longer filled only with suspicion. Some of the crew even greeted her with quiet respect. Her guidance in hyperspace had saved the fleet more than once. She had proven her value, and slowly, the humans were beginning to see her not as a prisoner but as an ally. Yet beneath this fragile trust, tension brewed. One evening, Admiral Renner called a private meeting on the bridge. Captain Alvarez, Lieutenant Harris, and several senior officers gathered around the glowing star table. "Our scouts have reported unusual movements," Renner began. "A loyalist Xerac fleet has not accepted King Zelvar's surrender. They refuse to recognize peace and are gathering near the Kernus Nebula. Their leader is General Vorth, a name you may know." Alvarez cursed under his breath. "Vorth, the butcher of Alos, he'll never stop fighting." "If he learns we have the princess," Renner nodded. He already knows. Intercepted transmissions confirm it. He sees her not as abandoned but as a symbol. He claims she must be reclaimed or destroyed. Harris leaned forward nervously. So he'll come for her? Renner's face was hard. Yes, and soon. The room grew heavy with silence. Everyone understood the danger. Vera herself learned of this the next morning when Harris told her in quiet words. She listened calmly, though inside her chest her heart pounded. My father gave me away, she said softly. Why would Vorth risk everything to take me back? Harris frowned. Because to him, you're not just a daughter. You're a banner. If he can use you, he can claim the king still stands strong. And if he destroys you, he can say he erased the king's shame. Vera lowered her eyes. So either way, I am only a tool. To my father. To Vorth. Harris shook his head firmly. Not to us. You're more than that, she said nothing. But his words stayed with her. The attack came sooner than expected. The Valiant and its escorts entered the outskirts of the Kernus Nebula, a region of glowing clouds and unstable gravity wells. The stars outside shimmered strangely, their light bent by shifting fields. It was a dangerous place, but a useful hiding ground for a fleet on the run. Alarms blared suddenly as sensors picked up massive signatures. General Vorth's ships burst from the mist, sleek and black, their weapons glowing with deadly power. The bridge shook as the first shots struck their shields. They're cutting us off, Alvarez shouted. We're outnumbered. Renner stood calm at the center of the storm. Hold formation! Return fire. Don't let them surround us. The Valiant roared as its cannons fired, but the Xeric loyalists pressed forward with merciless fury. One by one, smaller human ships fell back, their hulls scarred. It was clear. The humans were at risk of being crushed. In the middle of the chaos, Vera stood quietly at the back of the bridge. She watched the patterns of energy, the way the nebula pulsed and breathed. The humans saw only enemy fire and glowing clouds, but she saw deeper, the hidden flows, the invisible rivers beneath the storm. Her voice rose, clear and firm for the first time. You cannot fight them directly here. The nebula itself can be your shield. Renner turned sharply. Explain. She stepped closer to the star table, her hands hovering above the glowing map. These currents are unstable. If you move here, she pointed to a narrow channel of energy, the storm will collapse behind you. The Xerac will be trapped in its pull. Alvarez shook his head. That's madness. No one can predict these fields. I can, Vera said, her eyes steady. Trust me. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Renner studied her, then gave a sharp nod. Helm follow her course. All ships adjust to new formation. Alvarez began to protest, but Renner cut him off. We have no choice, do it. The fleet moved as she directed, slipping into the narrow path she had chosen. The nebula shifted and writhed, lightning-like energy flashing across its clouds. The Xeric loyalists pursued eagerly, mocking what they thought was a retreat. Then the trap sprung. The currents behind the humans twisted violently, collapsing into a raging vortex. The loyalist ships that chased too closely were dragged into the storm, their hulls torn apart by invisible forces. Explosions lit the nebula like fireworks. The remaining Xerac broke formation, their advance shattered. For the first time, the humans gained breathing room. Cheers filled the bridge. Harris laughed with relief. Alvarez, stunned, could only whisper, She was right. She was right. Renner's eyes softened as he looked at Vera. You saved us all. But the battle was not over. General Vorth's flagship remained, its guns blazing. The Loyalists regrouped, fury burning brighter than ever. They will come again, Vera warned. This time harder. Renner nodded grimly. Then we'll be ready, because now we know their strength is not greater than ours. The crew worked quickly, repairing systems, reloading weapons, yet in their hearts something new had taken root. They no longer looked at Vera as a burden or a stranger. They looked at her as the reason they were still alive. Later that night, when the battle had paused and the fleet hid deep within the nebula, Vera sat alone in the observation deck. She stared at the stars, her thoughts heavy. She remembered her father's words, his cold eyes as he gave her away. To him, she was useless. To Vorth, she was a banner. But to the humans, she was something else. They listened to her. They trusted her. When Harris found her there, she spoke without turning. Do you think I can ever belong? Not as a tool, not as a prize, but as myself. Harris smiled gently. You already do. You belong here with us." For the first time, her heart felt a flicker of warmth. Yet beyond the nebula, General Vorth plotted revenge. He would not stop until he either reclaimed the princess or destroyed her. The humans had won a small victory, but the war within the shadows was far from finished. Princess Vera's journey was only beginning. Her hidden strength had saved the fleet once, but greater trials awaited, and soon she would face the choice of who she truly was, the abandoned daughter of a king or the ally of humanity. The nebula glowed like a living fire as the Valiant and its fleet moved cautiously through the swirling clouds. The humans had survived the first attack of General Vorth, but danger still lingered. Every shadow of energy, every twist of the nebula seemed to hide new threats. The crew remained vigilant, yet for the first time a sense of hope filled the air. They had learned to trust Princess Vera. She had become more than an alien guest. She was a guide, a seer, and a friend. Vera walked the corridors with a purpose that had not been there before. Her steps were no longer hesitant. Humans no longer avoided her. They nodded, asked questions, and listened to her insights. Yet she still struggled with her place in this world. Her father, King Zelvar, had cast her away as a tool. The Xerac loyalists, led by General Vorth, saw her as a banner to rally behind. And the humans treated her like an equal. But she still felt torn between two worlds. Admiral Renner called another meeting in the command room, his face drawn but determined. "Vorth will strike again," he began. "This time he's planning a full assault on our position. He has over 50 ships and weapons more advanced than we have ever seen. We must prepare." Captain Alvarez frowned. "How do we even stand a chance?" "We're already stretched thin, and the nebula limits our maneuverability." Harris spoke quietly, glancing at Vera. "We have someone on our side the Xerac didn't expect. She sees things we can't. Maybe she can help us survive this." Vera looked at him, her eyes calm but resolute. "I can," she said. "But you must follow my directions exactly. Any hesitation and we will be lost." Renner nodded. "We trust you. Guide us." As the fleet prepared, Vera studied the nebula carefully. Its currents shifted constantly, unpredictable yet patterned to her eyes. She traced invisible lines of energy, listening to the subtle vibrations that ran through the ships. "This is not just a battlefield," she explained. "It is alive. It reacts to energy. If we move carefully, it can hide us, but if we make a wrong turn, it will crush us and our enemies alike." Alvarez muttered, "You make it sound almost human." She gave a faint smile. "In some ways it is, and so are you." Her words left the officers silent. For the first time, they realized the truth. Survival depended not only on weapons and shields, but on understanding the universe around them, a skill humans were learning from an alien once cast away. The attack began just before dawn. Vorth's fleet surged from the nebula clouds, black and shining, each ship bristling with weapons. Energy beams cut through the haze, striking smaller human vessels with deadly precision. Alarms rang as the human fleet scrambled into defensive formation. "Hold steady," Renner shouted. "Trust her guidance." Vera moved to the front of the command room, pointing at the energy flows across the nebula. "Left, then down. Now." The fleet obeyed, weaving through narrow currents of energy as if the stars themselves had opened a path. The Xerac pursued, expecting the humans to flee blindly, but Vera had predicted the current's reaction. The nebula seemed to respond to her commands, twisting and collapsing around the pursuing ships. Several loyalist ships were caught in sudden gravitational surges, crushed or thrown into the void. The humans avoided the deadly energy by mere inches, guided by her insight. Alvarez, watching the battle unfold, could not believe his eyes. "It's impossible," he muttered. "She's guiding us through chaos, and we're surviving." Harris leaned closer. "Not just surviving, we're gaining the advantage." Vera's lips moved as she focused, whispering calculations and patterns that no human mind could have known. Her connection to the nebula, to the energy currents, gave the humans an unexpected edge. Even the hardened sailors began to cheer quietly. Each time Vera gave directions, another ship avoided destruction. Slowly, the tide of battle shifted. The humans, once cornered and outnumbered, began to outmaneuver the Xerac fleet. During a brief lull, Renner turned to her. "Princess Vera, why do you help us? Your own people see you as weak, useless. Yet here you save lives, guide fleets, and inspire courage. She looked away, her expression unreadable. Because I have never had a choice before. My father gave me none. My people treated me as nothing. Here, I see what I can do. I choose this. I choose to help. And for the first time it feels... Right, Renner nodded solemnly. Then you are no longer a tool. You are part of our fleet, and part of us. For the first time, Vera allowed herself to feel a spark of belonging. The battle resumed, more intense than before. Vorth's flagship closed in, its cannons blazing with deadly precision. One human ship was hit and torn apart in a flash of light. The fleet staggered under the assault and hope threatened to falter. Vera stepped forward once more. We will not outrun them. We must turn the battle into our favor. Trust me. She traced a pattern across the star map, her fingers moving swiftly. Use the currents here and here. Their ships cannot follow without colliding. We will force them to scatter. Renner gave the order immediately. The fleet shifted as she instructed. The currents twisted and flowed like a river, and the Zerak found themselves caught in its paths. Ships collided, weapons misfired, and chaos consumed the enemy fleet. By the end of the maneuver, only a fraction of Vorth's ships remained operational. The humans had survived, and once again it was due to the guidance of the princess no one had expected to matter. After the battle, the fleet regrouped in the safer regions of the nebula. Sailors celebrated, though quietly, knowing that more danger could come at any time. Yet in the midst of their victory, something had changed. Vera walked among them, no longer timid or silent. The humans treated her as one of their own, listening to her suggestions and valuing her thoughts. Even Alvarez, once skeptical, now nodded respectfully whenever she spoke. Harris approached her later, watching as she stared at the nebula outside the observation window. You did more than guide us through the storm, he said quietly. You showed us what we're capable of when we work together. Vera smiled faintly. And you showed me what it means to be more than my father's daughter. It was a small, quiet moment, but it mattered more than any victory in battle. For Vera, it was the first time she felt she truly belonged somewhere. She was no longer a tool, no longer unwanted. Among the humans, she had value and a purpose of her own. Far across the galaxy, in the shadow of his throne, King Zelvar heard the reports. His daughter had survived, and the humans were praising her. Anger and regret filled him. In trying to save his own life, he had unknowingly created something far stronger than he imagined. And somewhere beyond the stars, General Vorth plotted anew. He would not give up. He would reclaim the princess or destroy her. But what he did not know, and what no one yet understood fully, was that Vera's greatest strength lay not in her bloodline, nor in the weapons she commanded, but in her spirit, now allied with humanity. The next battle would be even harder, more dangerous. But one thing was certain. The humans were no longer fighting alone. They had a guide, a protector, and a friend who had once been cast away. Princess Vera had found her place. And the galaxy would soon learn why humans, and those who chose to stand with them, were truly extraordinary. The nebula shimmered like liquid silver as the Valiant and its fleet moved carefully through the currents of energy that Princess Vera had learned to read. It was the calm before the storm. Every officer on the bridge knew what was coming. General Vorth's final assault. The Zerek loyalist fleet had regrouped and now approached with deadly precision. There would be no second chances. Admiral Renner stood tall, his eyes fixed on the glowing sensors. This is it, he said quietly. The enemy fleet is closing fast. But we have a plan. And one more advantage. All eyes turned toward Vera. She had grown confident, her presence commanding attention. Where once she had been timid, she now held herself like a leader. They underestimate us, she said calmly. They think I am weak because I was cast away. They do not know that weakness is only a word, not a truth. Follow my guidance and we will turn this attack into their defeat. Harris exchanged a glance with Alvarez. Do you believe her? He whispered. Alvarez shrugged, though his jaw was tight. At this point, we have no choice. If she is right, we survive. If she is wrong, well, we won't survive anyway. Vera studied the patterns of energy in the nebula. Each ripple, each current, pulsed in a way no human sensor could detect. To her eyes, the nebula was alive, a river of power waiting to be guided. Captain, she said, turning to Alvarez, we will draw them in here. Use the currents to divide their formation. Their fleet is large, but their coordination is weak. If we can scatter them, we can defeat them one ship at a time. Renner nodded. Then make it happen. The fleet moved as she instructed, weaving through the twisting clouds. Vorth's ships followed eagerly, confident in their numbers. But as they advanced, the nebula shifted at Vera's command, separating their ships, pushing them into dangerous currents. The first wave of Zerak ships was caught in sudden energy surges. Their shields faltered, weapons misfired, and one by one the humans gained the upper hand. The tide of battle shifted. From the bridge, the humans watched in awe. Vera's plan was brilliant, precise, and unexpected. Each maneuver brought a new victory, yet she remained focused, her eyes tracing the invisible lines of power that surrounded them. "Princess Vera," Harris said, leaning close, "how can you see all of this? No one else can." She looked at him with steady determination. "I have learned to see what others ignore. My people taught me only to follow orders. But here I am free to think, to act. I see the truth beneath the surface. And now I act." Renner allowed himself a small smile. "You've come a long way from the girl who barely spoke a word." Vera's lips curved faintly, but her eyes never left the battle. The Zerak flagship, Vorth's own vessel, surged forward, weapons blazing. Its captain believed he could crush the humans' command ship and reclaim the princess. "They are coming for us directly," Alvarez said, tension in his voice. Vera nodded. "Then we give them a trap they cannot escape." She traced a pattern across the star map, directing the Valiant into a narrow energy channel. The currents of the nebula bent sharply, twisting into a tunnel that Vorth's larger ship could barely navigate. "Prepare all weapons," Renner commanded. "Target their shields and engines." As Vorth's flagship entered the channel, the humans fired in perfect synchronization. Energy beams struck the ship, and Vera's guidance ensured each shot hit a weak point. The enormous vessel faltered, spinning out of control. "Now!" she shouted. "Push them into the current." The currents of the nebula responded, pulling Vorth's ship like a leaf in a storm. Explosions lit the tunnel as the flagship was crushed against the walls of energy, torn apart before it could escape. The remaining Zerak ships, witnessing the loss of their leader, began to retreat in chaos. The humans had turned the tide completely. The bridge erupted in cheers. Sailors hugged one another, and even Alvarez allowed himself a triumphant smile. Harris ran to Vera, his eyes shining. "You did it. You saved us all." Vera shook her head. "No, we did it together. You trusted me. You followed my guidance. This was not my victory alone." Renner approached, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "Princess Vera, you have proven something very important today. Not just skill, not just courage, but the strength of spirit. You've shown what can happen when someone who was cast away is given a chance. You belong with us now as one of our own." For the first time, Vera allowed herself to feel pride. The humans had accepted her. They had seen her worth where her own people had not. Far away in the halls of the Zerak Empire, King Zelvar received news of his daughter's triumph. Rage and disbelief filled him. The child he had cast aside had grown stronger than he could imagine, leading humans to victory. His advisors whispered cautiously, fearful of his wrath. Zelvar's face was dark with shame. "How could this happen?" he growled. "I gave her away. I cast her aside, and now she leads our enemies." But Vera's victory was not just physical. It was a message to the galaxy. Weakness, as defined by others, could be transformed into strength. Small, overlooked, underestimated, these were not limitations but opportunities. Humanity, with its willingness to see potential where others saw nothing, had nurtured that strength. In the calm after the storm, Vera walked among the crew of the Valiant. She no longer moved cautiously, no longer hesitated in their presence. They treated her as a trusted ally, a friend, even a family member. Harris smiled at her. "You've changed all of us. You've shown us courage we didn't know we had." She looked out at the stars, her heart light for the first time. "And you've shown me something I never believed I could have. A place where I belong." Renner, standing nearby, said softly, "Remember this feeling. Not everyone will see the value in you as we have. But here you are part of something greater. You are human in spirit now as much as any of us." Vera nodded, her eyes glimmering. She had survived her father's rejection, the enemy's attacks, and her own doubts. And in doing so, she had proven herself to the galaxy. In the following days, the humans repaired and strengthened their fleet. Stories of Vera's bravery spread quickly, Her name became known not as the ugly princess cast away by her father, but as the seer of the stars, the alien girl who guided humans through impossible danger. Even King Zelvar could not ignore her. The galaxy had changed. His actions to save himself had inadvertently empowered the humans, and his daughter now stood as living proof of humanity's unique strength. The ability to see worth where others see none, to turn weakness into power and to rise above expectation. As the fleet moved on, heading for new missions, Vera stood on the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before her, each one a promise of possibilities. She was no longer a pawn, no longer unwanted. She had a family among humans, a purpose, and the knowledge that even the smallest, most underestimated person could make a difference. Somewhere deep in the galaxy, General Vorth licked his wounds and plotted anew, but his threat now seemed less daunting. The humans had shown their strength, and Vera, once abandoned, had become a symbol of hope, courage, and the unique resilience of those who refused to be defined by the limits others placed upon them. For the humans, it was not just a victory in battle, it was a testament to why humanity was special. They saw potential where others saw failure, they nurtured what others abandoned, and they turned every challenge into a triumph. Princess Vera smiled quietly to herself, for she understood the truth of the HFY spirit. In the vast universe, strength was not measured only by might or heritage, but by heart, courage, and the choice to rise beyond what anyone believed possible. And in the endless stars above, humanity and the girl once cast aside stood ready to face whatever came next.